Thanks for joining me today, Ash.
Yeah, cheers. Excited to be here.
And just to give everyone a quick sort of introduction. So Ash helps sort of solopreneurs reach more people on LinkedIn. He's a content strategist, helps people essentially form a better content strategy. He looks at coupling storytelling and then kind of activation, so content production and planning. So yeah, Ash, obviously I became aware of you through LinkedIn. One of your posts that blew up, another one. So yeah, let's just kind of dive into kind of what you're doing and how you're helping business people
Yeah,
leverage
definitely.
storytelling.
Before we start, actually, which post was it? Do you remember? Because I know that I'm conscious that I'm posting every day, so you might not remember the exact one, but
Do you know what? I'm not sure what it was, but it was a visual one. Um,
hmm.
it might have been one after 2020 where there was like some balloons or something.
Oh
I'm
yeah, yeah,
I'm not sure. It was something very visual though, so it could be that
yeah.
one.
No, that's the one that was I was unashamedly bragging about my progress on LinkedIn. Yeah, yeah. It was the
Well,
balloons one. I think um I hit a certain milestone. Yeah, and I was just I was bragging about my, yeah, progress.
there's nothing wrong with bragging rights if you've smashed something, that's all
Yeah.
fine. So, yeah, kind of what's happening with you in terms of how are you helping like solopreneurs and get business. How did this kind of all come to fruition?
Yeah, so it started off I run an agency, so I run a creative agency. I have done for the last 11 years. And um I started that business when I lost my job, and it was the financial crisis in what 2009, 2008, 2009, and I decided to start my own business there, and I, moved 10 years on or 11 years on. I see the same kind of thing happening now. There's generally a trend of people wanting to start their own business. So the world of solopreneurs and entrepreneurs, but it's accelerated because of COVID. I feel, I think that I can't remember the exact stat, but there's a huge amount of people registered as self-employed because of COVID in the US and UK. And I would imagine that's probably around the world as well.
Yeah, no, I think there's been a lot of change, like given the environment. It's weird. You've got this environment of more risk or uncertainty, but within that, you've also got people making those leaps. And I think again with like the last crash, you could put yourself in that sort of bucket where, yeah, circumstances have been laid upon you, but you've took that circumstance and then turned it into a business that's been successful.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating how such kind of events can drive such creativity and force it. But I suppose that's again coming back to kind of human psychology. It's probably a natural
Yeah.
thing, really.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is that years before, when I was in a cushy job, and I was doing well in my work, I kept saying to myself that I wanted to start my own business, but kept giving myself excuses of why I shouldn't be doing it, and it was mainly because I was in that comfort zone. So the fact that I actually did lose my job, and it was horrible at the time because my daughter was 1 years old then. My wife was working part time, and I had to do something, but it forced me into a position, into a corner, and then it just turned into like, I've got to do something, and all of those things that I've been talking about in previous years, I actually put into action. So in hindsight, it was probably the best thing that happened to me.
Well, this is it. And actually, a good question or something that kind of popped up to me, there was: is there anyone who? I mean, it might seem negative, but is there anyone who shouldn't start a business? Is there anyone that you think? Do you know what? Like, does it lend itself, its characteristics specifically to someone with traits that serve it?
I think, yeah, it's a good point, and I think there's probably a myriad of reasons why people shouldn't start their business. Where you might think you're prepared. You know, let's just say competence, experience, and mindset. They're all important things. Now, um, there are probably a lot of people that have pipe dreams, but they don't plan well. They have, and it's great to have dreams. Don't get me wrong, but you have to make sure that you plan well for them. And if you're, you know, if you're thinking that um, it's all glitz and glamour, it's not. It's hard work. I mean, sometimes it's harder. You yourself probably know it's hard. Sometimes could be harder than your 9 to 5 job that you're trying to escape, and you've got to have a healthy balance of, you know, what it is and what it isn't.
Yeah, I think one of the first things I realized was if you have a bad week where you're working full time, you're still going to get paid. If you have a bad week, but you're freelance, you're getting nothing. So
Yeah,
it's kind of one of those where there's a thrill to that because it's all in your control. Well, some of it's in your control,
yeah,
but there's a scare, that kind of fear, which is like, shit, like how am I going to get work? Where's the business going to come from? And actually, this leads really well into kind of the first point you talked about, planning. So,
mm,
if we look at what are the main reasons why solopreneurs and businesses fail, and go through those, perhaps that'd be a good one to start at. So, is there
yeah.
anything that you work with people on around planning to make that success happen?
Yeah, and I think and it goes back to that, you know, there's a myriad of reasons why people do fail, and it could be down to the competency, experience, the mindset. But I often find that, um, and it's quite common as well, those people that do give up and fail is because they don't expect or plan for the dips in business. Like, for example, if you're thinking of starting up a business, you know where you are, you know your present state, you know it really well. You might be trying to escape it because it's giving you a hard time. So that's certain. What's also probably not certain, but what you have in your mind is that future state of where you want to be and how life could be so much better. The grass is greener on that other side. What we don't do is, because they're negatives or perceived negatives, is those dips, and that dip is, you know, it's like if you don't plan for those things that might be challenging, then it's going to be hard for you to navigate through that. Um, However, if you do plan for them, or you do expect them, you can have plans in place. Now, there's going to be things that you can't plan for, like COVID, for example. No one could have seen that coming. But there are things like, I don't know, your, you know, your maybe your suppliers raising their prices, or competition coming in and underpricing you. If you kind of expect for those certain, you know, specific things happening, you might be able to plan for them better. And that takes me to the other point as well. That dip as well. Sometimes, if you don't plan for them, you think that's the end state, that's the end game, and you think your idea was rubbish, and that's when you quit. But sometimes you just need that push. You need to expect that to get through and get the traction that you need to get to that other side. Does that make
So when you
sense?
yeah, so when you're talking about dips, are you just talking about dips in business, or are you talking about are the dips all of the barriers or the challenges that are going to hit you at some point?
And I think, yeah, I think it could be both. You know, it could
Mm,
be the dips in business, but also it could be the dips in your energy and your mental state as well.
mm.
Because there are going to be times, without a doubt, that you're going to feel low because the money's not coming in, or it's taking longer than you thought to realize your plans. But you know, keeping that positive mindset is so important.
Yeah, well, I think one thing that kind of struck me this week, being in this kind of position, it's weird. I'm actually probably a good person to kind of speak because given I've just kind of started, where I am, I'm feeling some of these things myself. But one is actually being overwhelmed.
Mm,
Like I feel like you can have this feast and famine situation going on where what, you know, when you kick off, it's like, I need to find business, or I need to move quick, I need to meet people, I need to connect. And then when stuff starts to come in and more stuff starts to come in, you've got decisions to make. Do you know what I mean? Like, choose this, don't choose that. And what's the chance of this business, you know, actually coming in? What am I feeling from this potential client? Is this the type, you know, how much does this work marry to exactly what I want to do? Is it kind of on the peripheral of that? Or is it, you know, say I want to work primarily in strategy and positioning, it's bang on that. And it's kind of balancing that, like what you really want to do with what's available. And
Yeah, yeah,
I've struggled with, yeah, that overwhelming feeling, and I've had to like kind of, I mean, started writing it down and then drawing up like a spreadsheet that was like basically new business and kind of assigning a status and where it is and getting it out of my head.
yeah.
But I've only just started doing that, so I don't know if there's something in there. Again, you kind of encounter that with people feeling that way.
Yeah, I do. And also from a personal experience as well. When I first started, I know what I wanted to do. I wanted to start a creative agency, but then I was trying to do everything as well. Like, you know, I felt like, oh, I do web design, or I'll do graphic design, because, you know, everyone needs all these services, and the new things will come up. Like even the past few years, like, I don't know, augmented reality. I've tried my hand at that, trying to learn that. It's that shiny object syndrome. But then you've just got to remember that, you know, what is your main goal? What is your focus? What is the thing that you strategize? And don't get me wrong as well. I've a lot of my journey has been a serendipitous journey. So it's good to try different things, but also it's, I feel like I'm giving contradictory advice here, but you know, try different things, but just make sure that you are focusing on why you're doing things and who you're serving as well, and how, you know, how, be realistic as well. Like my most recent one with augmented reality that I was trying to learn, I thought I could do it very quickly, but it was a long game, and there were specialists involved that have been doing it for years actually. So I was like, no, I knew when to quit. So that's another thing. You have to know when to quit.
Yeah, and do you know what? I think the contradictory stuff is actually, I'm learning that there's a lot of paradoxical elements to life and business. Do you know what I mean? One grain of advice or something you'd hear could be like the perfect wisdom for the day, but then something else could be someone else's downfall. So,
Mm.
and again, maybe it's because of like meditation stuff, but there are lots of ideas that are quite hard to hold in unison, two opposing things that, you know, could propel you forward or do the opposite.
Yeah.
And that is, I guess that's the genius of like people that are successful or make it. I'm always like, they somehow knew what they needed to do in that moment, and those decisions led them to where they are.
Yeah, there's a term for that. I read a recent article, that paradox. Like people are doing well with new products that have that opposite meaning. Like, I don't know, something. An example would be a cheap luxury good. You know, like that's the example in the article. I can't remember exactly what they did, but the business did really well out of it, thinking like that. But yeah, digressing. But yeah, it's
No,
interesting.
yeah, no, it makes sense. So, you know, coming back to kind of business side of things and kind of building brands, you know, where do you kind of start with people if someone comes to you
Mm.
and they're like, yeah, I want to expand my profile. I work in, say again, let's say they're in an agency space. Where would you start with them?
So, is it you're thinking generally how I help them with their business, or specifically on LinkedIn?
Let's say specifically with LinkedIn, you know, they know that they know that there's a channel that their buyers are on there. You know, we know sales and marketing and agencies, it's, you know, open game. We're all over the place, marketers, especially on
Yeah,
LinkedIn. And they pretty much have minimal or no kind of LinkedIn presence. They've got connections, and they tamper about with it, but you know, it's been more of that working CV kind of thing. So
Yeah.
what kind of, where do you start with them? Do you know, is it more about putting the strategy together first and all of that stuff, and then
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. So I have this thing about starting at the end when it comes to brand strategy, and I am a brand strategist as well. That's a lot of what I do with my with the agency work that I do. So, and what I mean by starting at the end is like almost having that vision of where you want your if it's your brand or your specific project, is where do you want it to be, and that could be where do you want it to be in a year's time or 10 years or 20 years, and then I feel it's easier to plan how you get there, so all those other elements come into place too. So you know, why you do what you do, who you're doing it for, what do you need to do to get to that end state. So you know, those future goals and your vision, if you like, is the place where I would say to start. And with regards to how I work with people, is I'll get on a call with them and I'll have that discovery session with them, and then we'll start putting that plan together.
that makes sense. Like you say, kind of map out the goals, map out the end journey. I think again, looking at kind of my approach to it so far, I haven't kind of put, you know, a stake in the ground and gone, this is where I want to be. And I think it's probably a symptom of what I kind of mentioned earlier about wanting to move quickly, or feeling a bit overwhelmed, or feeling like, well, I need to do something. And they kind of become a bit disjointed. You know, there's
Mm,
not this kind of like, right, I'm going to do, yeah, here's the end goal. And there's a set of milestones, and I'm going to measure success in this way.
mm,
It seems very obvious, but it's funny how, again, even me as a marketer, I've kind of gone, oh, well, this post here, what I'll do is I'll measure the engagement, and I'll write down what happened, and I'll write down what time, and log it all, and then kind of use that to inform my efforts. But yeah, I think in terms of an ultimate sort of goal at the end, like what kind of goals do people typically put together? Do they go, I want X amount of followers, or I want X amount of business from this channel? Is
and
that
that
typical?
Yeah, and that's the important question to ask with anyone that I work with, is like, what do you want? And for some people, it might just be, look, I just want to conquer my fear of posting and just start being consistent about. I don't have any goals or business goals. I just want to be out there, and then you know, their business ideas will come from that, and it certainly did with me for my new project that I'm doing. And others, it might be that, look, I want to get new business out of it, and this is my goal, and this is what I know. These are my services. These are my products. So then we'll start ideating. Well. Putting a plan together in terms of, okay, who is your customer? What challenges are you going to face? Who's your competition? Um, how well do you know LinkedIn? What's going to be your short-term goals? Like, is it going to be the engagement? Is it going to be the followers? And then let's drill down, like, who are those followers, and who is the audience that you want to target. So, you know, everyone's goals are going to be different, but it comes down to that, having that initial discovery session, and asking that really important question that you just asked. You know, what is it that you want to achieve?
Yeah, I think, you know, from a business point of view, I've kind of gone with the classic marketing and mapped out who is it I'm trying to speak to and what are their pain points, and then gone, okay, well, what the challenge is then is sometimes those pain points can be known by the industry at large, and those messages are also being shouted from other people trying to vie for the same attention and business.
Yeah.
And that's when I kind of go, right, I know that these are the problems. I'm seated very much myself in this industry. So now it's about this differentiation and like, what's the voice? Why are people even bothering to listen to me? Because it's like, you know, the worst thing I think for any of us is to kind of, well, it's to be ignored, isn't it? Or to be indifferent.
Yeah.
It's almost like, okay, they don't exist, which is you'd rather a reaction that's negative in some way than nothing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think differentiation, is there anything around that you work with people on to kind of help them find that at all?
Yeah, I come from the Marty Neumeier School of Branding, and I'm part of his alumni group as well. So, yeah, he talks. I don't know whether you've read it or come across of with any of his books. Some of he's written quite a few. The Brand Gap, the Brand Flip, and the Zig is one of my favorites. And the Zig is about that differentiation. So basically, in a nutshell, what that is when everyone, sorry, not the Zig, the Zag. Um, you can edit that part out as well because I don't want Marty thinking that. Hold on, I thought I'm been but basically, yeah. So what the zag is when everyone zigs, you zag. So it's about being unique. So you might be offering the same things or services to the certain set of people, but it's how you position yourself, how you do things differently. And he talks about how it's important to be not only different but radically different, and obviously good at what you do, and that's how you become that innovative company.
Yeah, like you say, and I'd actually heard someone else use that term. I think it was
Mm,
Chris Walker from Refine Labs. I'm not sure if you follow any of their stuff, but the zig and zag, and again, it was talking about as soon as there's almost like a gold rush to certain tactics as well in marketing. I think where it's like, there's only a few select people doing it, and it seems to be working well, and
yeah,
then slowly people cotton on to the strategy or the tactic, and it almost becomes easier to replicate, and then before you know it, everyone's doing it and it doesn't work anymore, and it's
yeah.
time to move on. So finding the cusp of those progressive tactics can be quite hard, and I always wonder sometimes I've only come upon them from a chat with a colleague, or I end up working with an organization that has found like rapid success with something that they can sort of scale, and they seem to be the only ones doing it.
Mm.
So it's funny how these things come along.
I
Um,
think it's important, though. I think it is important to it's an age-old debate, isn't it? Should you be a generalist or should you be niching and focusing? And I genuinely think that you should find your thing
mhm.
and kind of stick to it. Because I think there's the you I've tried it in the past. I've tried everything, and I've got more success from focusing on that one thing. And also, it's hard as a solopreneur. It's hard to do everything. Like, yeah, you can. Like, I have a team because I have independent contractors on my team. I have permanent members on my team, part-time members. But still, it's like it's a small team. Like, you can't do everything, and if you focus on being really good at that one thing, you're gonna probably there's more chance of getting known for that one thing. Yeah, it's a difficult one, but like you say, it's is that where your overwhelm comes from, do you think?
I think my overwhelming comes from a couple of things. It comes from, yeah, drilling down or banking down onto like one specific thing. So, for example, I could choose to go, right, B2B tech and SaaS is my focus. And I'm just going to focus on, creating content or creating creative based content for those industries.
Oh, I
And
see. Right.
let's say I'm like, right, PPC is exploding. Like, I'm seeing a lot of tech and B2B SaaS looking to up their efforts because they realize that a lot of B2B marketing can be quite dull and mundane. So something that I'm kind of shifting towards is, well, B2C seem to almost be on the front foot with a lot of the way that they do their branding, their ads, their campaign, their visuals, their creative. So I'm like this is an opportunity to marry this together
Mm,
and better. But then you kind of come into, well, we could do video, and we could do landing pages, and we can do PPC management, and then you're talking about a full service agency.
yeah, that's right.
And I have noticed that, you know, uh, again, being a creative, I can work in that capacity, and I have the ideas, but it doesn't mean I should do it. Maybe actually what I
Mm,
should do is think about one of those areas, and like you talked about, niching down into it and going, this is what I do. This is again, what I'm going to get really good at, because it's the only thing that I'm focusing on. So naturally I have more value to offer people. But yeah, the overwhelm comes from, I think it's decision making that is just, it's almost like it compounds on itself, where like you're making constantly these decisions and questioning, is this right? Is it wrong? Is it? And then you become overwhelmed by where you are.
Yeah, yeah. It's a common thing. And also going back to that niching, like you could this is what I do with the agency. So I do creative we do creative solutions, but we focus on one vertical and or industry, and that's the world of work. So it's like recruitment or talent, those in the talent business. So yeah, when I say talent, I mean like, world of work talent, not
Yeah.
like
Yeah. No, we're on the right thread.
yeah.
And you mentioned earlier, we were talking about this kind of fear of people's opinions, the FOPO.
Yeah.
So what, is it the people that have come to you, what's the advice on helping people get past that kind of
Yeah,
FOPO?
it's an interesting one actually, and I only came across the term very recently, and it's a phrase coined by, I don't know whether you've looked it up or anything, but it's a phrase coined by a performance psychologist named Michael Gervais, and he wrote a Harvard Business Review article on it, and I just thought I never I've suffered from it myself, like fear of people's opinions, whether it's also and I think a lot of the fears that you have, fear of failure, fear of not being good enough, like the imposter syndrome. I think it all comes down to people's opinions and perception of what you think people think about you. Um, yeah, and I think that's that I've experienced it, and I see it a lot with people that I work with. Like even things like, "Oh, I'm not sure if I should post that." Like, get nervous before I hit that send. It's like, will it resonate with people? Am I doing the right thing? But all of these things really stop you and hinder your progress, and I've found that more and more. How I deal with it is again comes back to that strategy of who you serving and what are your personal values. So I think there's two things at play when it comes to social media. Certainly on LinkedIn, I've found is that um, it's you're presenting to the world as well as your business and services. So I think how I work with my clients is working on their own personal philosophy and your personal values, and the type of person you are, as well as your services, and all of these things inform the content that you put out there. So what I mean about that personal philosophy is like, who are you? What do you stand for? And then that's really just all that matters. And so my personal values are being kind to people, and they might be generic terms, but it's these things that resonate with a lot of people. Being kind to people, but also recently, and it's very recent, being kind to myself as well. That I wasn't doing enough of that. Then the other thing is respect. Just be respectful, because there's a lot of people on social media that will just like kick you down, and like I don't think it serves anyone well. And then also just being yourself. That's another big thing. And I'm still learning, like to be myself. And in fact, that ties in with the issue that I had with the term personal branding. I never used to like that term at all. And I had a conversation with a good friend of mine recently as well, and he said like all personal branding is reputation. It's like your reputation, who you are, and it's the best version of yourself as well. So that's all it is. It's like, and if I'm presenting the best version of myself, then I'm happy with that term personal branding, and I'll do more of it. It's not an engineered version of yourself, basically.
Yeah, I think it comes into question with the idea of that self-love, kind of thing, doesn't it? Because,
Yeah.
and that's why, like, meta meditation and stuff like that, I love all of that, because it's like, if the reaction that you have inside when you think about posting something is a reaction that nothing, in all respects, there's nothing else going on around you. There's no reason to feel negative. You haven't
Yeah.
even posted it yet. You haven't done nothing in the world is, but you are creating this resounding negative feeling. And it's all it's crazy how many people have it. It's kind
Yeah.
of it's almost I think from a cultural perspective, in a way, it's concerning as well, isn't it? But
Mm.
the fact that so many people have it, and again with something like meta meditation, that kind of loving kindness, I think something that I've learned with that is when you default into that mindset, it's like, actually no, bring self-love to shame in essence, because that's kind of what's going on there. And then when you post, it's just a different thing. It's like, no, actually, like, I don't have to default straight to the, sometimes I might be in the gym or something, when you can go in the gym, and someone will be like, I'll get on a machine, and let's say I haven't used it before, and the trainer comes over and's like, I'm fiddling around like an idiot.
Yeah.
And normally my response to that in the past has been, what an idiot. But it's not just what an idiot that's playful, it's what an idiot but
Mm.
very critical, that voice. And I think in recent times, when those situations occur, instead of doing that, I kind of laugh or smile at the kind of, yeah, like, I didn't get that right, and that's
Yeah.
okay. But
Yeah.
I think it's permeates a lot of culture. A lot of people are feeling that, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know what it is. And it's like, is it a human default to think of the negative stories? And that's a big thing that I do focus on is as well. It's like with regards to storytelling, it's storytelling, the stories that you tell other people, but what's as important are the stories you tell yourself as well. They're really important. Like, and going back to that FOPO and that personal philosophy is like, there's an exercise, a part of my course as well, is what I do is like list all the things. Take a specific example of a challenge. Like, okay, it might be, for example, I'm thinking this about posting and what other people might think about this post. List all the bad things on one side, then list all the good things. So it might be people might hate this post, or people might think I'm incompetent, or people might think I'm inexperienced. Then list the complete opposite on the other side is like, people will love this post. People are going to think that I'm an authority in what I'm talking about. And then ask yourself that real question and genuinely ask that question: which of these things have happened? Like, are you certain that are true? And the answer is none yet, because you've not posted. So rather than defaulting to that negative side, it's just as easy to believe that, that the positive column. And that helps me a lot. And it's a daily habit that I think that we have to do.
Yeah,
Yeah, because it happens to me as well, like even now, but it's less so.
yeah, I'd agree that there's some sort of daily practice or daily reminder, because that default, I don't think ever leaves, does it? In some respect.
No.
And in terms of storytelling, I think one thing I noticed, I thought I'd ask you is around how can one be a crap writer but do storytelling well.
Yeah.
And I can, again, I'm a very creative sort of writer. I just kind of splurge stuff out, and then I'm like, oh, I've got to like organize this, and this takes ages.
Mm.
So I think it'd be useful, like, is there kind of some suggestions there about, yeah, I'm bad at writing but I can still do good storytelling?
Yeah. And look, this is social media as well. Like, you've got to remember that you don't have to be a Hollywood scriptwriter. You don't have to be Stephen King, Jane Austen, or whoever those like literary greats. It's social media, and again, it goes back to just think about your audience, thinking about what they want, and think about how you'd talk as well in real life. Like, sometimes those short, choppy co- types of copy work really well, and it's been working really well for me recently as well. It's, you don't have to be the best writer at all. Just have a bit of a focus, have a bit of a strategy, and write how you talk normally, and you'll do just fine.
And in terms of, as we're on sort of storytelling, I know you kind of come up with your story converter method, which again, which is kind of about getting under the skin of their audience and again helping clients do that. And I think you talked about kind of the big story and all these kind of elements. Can we just dive into that and kind of talk about what is that method and how does it kind of help people?
Yeah, so the story converter method is basically a framework that I've devised, and it's a framework that I've been using for my clients in brand strategy or creative advertising campaigns. And I've repurposed that to use specifically for LinkedIn. And it has two use cases. So one of the use cases is basically that branding, that positioning, and how to position yourself, identifying that your audience. And you talked about those pain points and how you get to that that end in terms of what you're trying to achieve as a business and your personal brand. And then the other side of it is using that same framework to structure your story as well. So it's almost like a narrative arc. And it's just something that's worked really well for me. It's not a strict framework. I mean, no one wants a formulaic content all the time because it just gets boring. But it serves as a bit of a guide, and I think it helps me, and it's been helping because I'm running through the beta group at the moment of students. So I've got 10 beta students, and that's been running since January, and it's really making their life easier.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the point you made about putting the structure around it. That's something, again, with my ideas and kind of creativity, that's, again, it's always kind of, let's pull this back to some structure. So what does that look like? Is it as simple as, I don't know, posting at certain times and putting almost like a week kind of, not a timesheet, but do you know what I mean? Something to go, right, well, we're going to post about this pain point here, this pain point here, and then shifting solutions for the next week? Or how does that all look?
Yeah, you know what? Funnily enough, and I'll probably get grilled by a load of content creators out there, but I don't believe in a 30-day content calendar. I don't believe in, like, a lot of my content is, a lot of it's done on a weekly basis, but it's just through ideas. So having that framework where I know what my services are, what my personal values are, where I want to get, how I want to help my customers through my content, I've developed then themes. So I stick to those themes, and then I'll use content generation. I get inspiration from everywhere, from conversations. I might even make a post about this later on. You never know. Or I might read a book and I just get some content ideas, and then I'll see how that idea fits into those themes. Sometimes I'll just, I'll be, I don't know, out and about, and I'll just send myself a voice memo if I come up with an idea, send it to the cloud, and then on like a Saturday or the weekend, I'll come up with maybe post ideas. And once you start doing that, you'll find that you will never run out of ideas. I think the problem you'll find is that you'll have so many ideas, and then when you have that framework to put in, take those ideas and put it into an actual structured bit of copy or visual, that's when obviously the magic happens. And but it's easier to do that when you know your pillars and your themes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the bit I think that I probably have the big struggle with, like the idea. It's like, you look at my voice notes, you look at my notes, and like, and it's just this explosion of stuff. Like the way that I'll create a PowerPoint deck or like, Google Slides, I'll have this idea and it'll come to me and I'll pack out a slide. And then let's say there's 15 slides, you'll have like 3 slides that are packed out, and then the other slides will just be like a couple of words or a couple of lines. And it's sort of like, that's how it all kind of happens. Like I can't force certain elements, but what happens is I struggle to organize those ideas. It's like, okay, well, I've done this and this, but that isn't the full story. And it's
Right.
not, but it's not being bucketed into this kind of category or this kind of topics and this framework that you're talking about. But it sounds like a godsend for creative people who typically don't work in that fashion and need some sort of structure
Some
to
kind
marry
of
it
structure.
together.
And I think that's right, especially with creative people. It's like yeah, you have so many ideas, and it's hard to sometimes just be contained. You don't want to be contained in a box. That's like the opposite to being creative, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes you do need that structure.
And in terms of, I think there was something that I saw in terms of your kind of framework, this kind of the big story.
Mm.
So what is, maybe let's unpack that. What is, what's that framework there? Is kind of the approach that you'll work with people on, um, basically understanding the story of their prospects and their kind of buyers, and then their own, and then what marrying that up into some sort of, again, problem and solution kind of um, framework.
Yeah,
Is that how it works?
yeah. Well, the big story is just basically the big narrative, the bigger narrative. It's like, let me give you my example. So my audience are solopreneurs who want to create content on LinkedIn. So and that big story is, that this is it. That's my audience, and they want to create content to get results, drive leads, more business. So that's my big narrative.
Hmm.
Underneath that is, what are all the things that maybe stop them, like the imposter syndrome or mindset or well-being, but also business growth, and how, or content writing. So all those are the little stories underneath that big story. So that's what I meant by that. I'm not sure. I'm surprised actually that you picked that up, because I don't know where I've written that. Is that on my LinkedIn profile?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, whenever I do my research, I try and, again, to make sure there's some context,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
sometimes I can be like, I'm stuck in my head, stuck in my world,
yeah,
and have conversations where I'm talking about B2B tech, or I'm talking about this, and it's like, well, whomever I'm speaking to, this is their subject or their expertise is actually in other areas like storytelling and
yeah.
brand. And so yeah, I saw the kind of big story. It might have been around the framework or the story converter method that you mentioned,
Right.
that I kind of found that. And in terms of kind of, I don't know, is there any other areas that you'll coach sort of solopreneurs on that maybe sit slightly away from this? So like, whether it is productivity, time management, or you mentioned well-being. Um, is there anything that you kind of advocate or push towards that you think
Yeah, so
help people?
that more leans to the one-on-one coaching. So and what I've started doing now is, as well, part of that coaching is that I'll give that digital product, like the storytelling course, to them, but I'll have one-on-one sessions, and that's very bespoke to the challenges that they have individually. So,
Mm,
some people might have very different challenges. Like their main challenge is, like, they want to be on LinkedIn, they want to, but it might be, like you say, productivity or that mindset stuff. And I'm not I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a counselor, and I don't pretend to be. But there's certain things that have worked for me over the last 20 years, and I feel like, if I can help them through the challenges that, I think, some of these challenges are pretty common with solopreneurs as well. You'll find, like the productivity, like the well-being, the overworking and the efficiency and stuff like that. And I've managed to, over, like I said, over the years, figure out the things that work for me, and hopefully they'll work for others as well.
yeah, if you've got a mentor, you've got someone very close to you, whilst that'd be like the perfect scenario, wouldn't it? You're building a business, and you've got someone that's done this 10 times over, or they can kind of see you as you hit these thresholds, these points, these milestones, and go through the same thing. But it's weird how, I think there's a lot of people that still don't have access to that, and they're kind
Mm,
of, yeah, they
right.
need it, which is, again, it's one of the reasons why I reach out to people and connect. I reach out because there's always something to learn, especially in marketing. In any industry, it just doesn't end.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing is it gets you out of your head, or whatever it is that you're struggling with. And especially from a business point of view, you started your business, you say 10 years ago now,
Yeah.
11 years,
Around about
which
11
is,
years. Yeah.
yeah, that is a real sort of meaty period of time, with a lot of learning, a lot of lessons, a lot of things that happen within that. And you've got someone that's like 2 months in. It's like, well, yeah, like, if I sit down with this person, they're probably going to have a few things to kind of say,
Yeah.
don't do that, don't do that.
Yeah, and it all comes down to, it should be from, what your individual problems are, and maybe I can have a bag of something out of my bag of tricks that might help you. So, but I onto that point as well. When I did start like 11 years ago, there was less of that support. Maybe it was around, but I just didn't have access to it. I think is more happening more now. And certainly over the past 18 months, I've started being part of more online groups and communities, and just to give myself that, the accountability for performance or support, because that's one thing as a solopreneur. And I think even now with COVID, more and more people are finding it. You're on your own a lot of the time, and it's a very lonely place, man. Like you don't care what people say. People need support of other people. You can't do everything by yourself, whether it's mental support or that, the performance accountability. I think it's just important to have that, or access to that.
Yeah, like you say, I think, going back 10, 11 years, I mean, I was finishing, was I finished? No, I was still in uni. And yeah, Facebook was around. But again, Facebook was like the uni pictures. You've just done a night out, you'd log onto Facebook the following morning, and
Right.
all the pictures from uni, all of the stuff that you just don't want to see that's happened the night before would be
Yeah.
on there. But social was different. And then yeah, I think like mentorship and things like that, the kind of connections were just being sown, weren't they? Whereas
Mm.
now I think like people can reach out through LinkedIn and these types of channels, and COVID has made that thing of disconnection, made people really like, wow, I need to connect with people, and Zoom is like, you mentioned earlier about Zoom fatigue, and yeah, it's a thing, but I don't know, like when you engage with the right people, um you should actually feel afterwards pretty buzzed, like yeah,
Yeah.
like I've learned something there, and I've had that multiple occasions where it's I haven't left the house, but we just had really good conversation, learned a bunch of stuff, and had that kind of connection. So it's not that the technology has to be this, it doesn't have to be a negative. Again, it can really kind of help people.
No,
So
no, absolutely. Is that one of the reasons why you started this podcast?
I mean, potentially it was for a number of reasons. I think I knew that I hadn't really fully took advantage of LinkedIn. I again would sign in every now and again and be very kind of anonymous in the background. I certainly had the kind of fear of posting thing, it was like, why would anyone want to hear anything that I've got to say,
Yeah.
kind of thing going on. And then the kind of the podcast and the connection was like, well, the best way for me to learn seems to be through connection. And in also doing that, like there's a kind of mutual benefit from both sides, because we're all in the same industry. So long as people are trying to help each other, it's the human element to it, isn't it? Again, it's like I'm getting to talk to people and
Yeah.
make those human connections that I can't do right now because of the pandemic. But I'm also, in some sense, learning and being coached, and people will say things to me like, "Oh, yeah, I never thought of that," and now they might share something with me, like a resource, or
Mm.
and then and there's an element that I don't know as well. There's an element of I like connecting to people and speaking. I mean, the fact that I'm talking now, I don't know, it's been 60 seconds or 90 seconds, but I think marketers and people can just ramble on.
Yeah.
There's probably that kind of element to it as well. So yeah, it's funny how it kind of
I think it's a
started.
great thing, yeah, and I definitely want to do more of it. In fact, I'm thinking of doing a LinkedIn Live. You have to apply for the LinkedIn Live. I don't know whether you're aware of it, but it's I'm thinking of starting up called Solo Shorts, basically solopreneur short stories. So
Mhm.
talking to people like this who have started their journey, and that might help and inspire others along the way as well.
Yeah, well, this is it, and it's nice to see people doing that. And again, it's like it's the connecting, but it's also just another way to add value, isn't it? Like,
Mm.
okay, we know that there's X amount of people that are starting businesses currently during this time, and like you say, being such an isolated sort of moment where that's exactly the opposite of what someone in that position needs.
Yeah.
It's just going to diminish their, chances of success. So I think, you can see podcasts and things popping up, and again, but there's that thing that creeps in, doesn't it? Like the imposter syndrome and the negative, because when I've had these thoughts, I've gone, oh, but why would anyone bother? Or like, who are you going to talk to? Why would people even get on and speak to you? All those kind of just nasty things that you kind of say.
Yeah.
But when it comes back to, well, actually, what I'm trying to do is share good advice with people that are on the similar journey,
Yeah.
or starting businesses, and you kind of go, well, why shouldn't you then? There's
Yeah,
really nothing
absolutely.
there.
And I think the thing is as well, there's always going to be someone that's going to learn from you. And it's usually not just someone, it's a lot of people. Like,
Mm,
you're where you are now, there's someone that's thinking of doing what you're doing, or might be inspired with what you're doing, that hasn't got a clue where to start. So as much as there'll be those people that you feel like are way ahead of you, and you feel like, what am I adding to that? Thinking about those people, it might stop you from doing what you're doing, but it should really focus on the people that, those tons of people that you will be helping, and there will be a lot of them.
yeah. I had a message from a friend yesterday who kind of said, oh yeah, I've just seen like Grow Demand, I've just seen what you've started, and I looked at the logo and all the stuff. And he goes, yeah, he's like, I love it when people kind of take things into their own hands. And he's like, I really like the logo and everything you come up with, and like little visuals. And you're like, it's like one of the first people that said it. There's only been a couple, and you're like, oh, okay, so it's maybe there is something to this, and it's not just all in my head. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
so it's nice when people do that, and they reach out. And in terms of, maybe to kind of, sort of close up, there was, from a LinkedIn perspective, I don't know, there's a kind of like, I don't know, 3 tips, or 5, or whatever it may be. We can pick a number, like things that you think people need to kind of focus on to make a
Yeah,
success of
I
the
mean,
platform.
we've talked a lot about strategy, but again, me contradicting myself, is keep trying different things on LinkedIn, like
Mm.
variety of formats. Sometimes video, for example, is not getting the best reach, but it serves a different purpose. It gives your personality to someone. So yeah, different formats, and different people prefer different things as well. So um text text posts are working really well, but some people might prefer carousels, and they also do really well. So I know a variety of formats has served me well, although I have been doing more text recently. I need to do more video. The other tip is, be consistent, but like, don't worry, don't get hung up on if you can't post every day. Try 3 times a week. Um and some days, some weeks it might be 3 times a week, or it might be every day, but just be consistent. And when you are consistent as well, there was a point where I went through, like, I was doing really well with my engagement and my post, and then it I, it added to the pressure of my next post. Like, is it going to do well? Is it not going to do well? And then I just thought in my head, like, even if 1 or 2 or 3 people like this post and it's made a difference to them, that's where I should aim for. Like, even though my posts before were doing 20,000, 40,000 per views, if I just have in my head that, like, even if it just affects one person or helps one person, then I've done my job. Um, so, and that's helped me. So, like, don't worry, you are going to have those dips as well, and that's just comes part and parcel of it. An experiment as well. Yeah, it's experiment, and I do get analytical about my post. I use an app called Shield app. I don't know whether you've heard of Shield app, but
Yeah.
it's a third party LinkedIn analytics tool, and it's like, yeah, um, LinkedIn has its own analytics, but this is like LinkedIn analytics on steroids. So it's like if you're really geeky about the analytics side of things, which you probably are being a digital marketer, um, you can find out what posts are doing well, the average views of certain types of posts, what times doing well, and where your audience is in terms of geographic location, but also the companies that they work for. So it just informs you, a better content strategy of what's working well and like if what's resonating with people. So yeah, that's Shield app.
Yeah, no, I love that. I'll be checking that one out. I've always felt as though LinkedIn's analytics that are native in the platform are very basic, and
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, you guys must have so much data here that if you were feeding it to me, I could do a lot more, at least learn a lot more of what's going on.
Yeah.
So I'll check that one out. And yeah, kind of final question that I kind of been asking people is, what's kept you sane through like lockdown?
Oh God, what's kept me sane? The thing is, like I've been working from home for a long time. Even when I was employed, like before I lost my job, I was actually was a home based role. So I feel like not a lot has changed. The only thing has changed, like in terms of the way I work, but the thing that has changed is like not being able to go out to restaurants, and go and see friends and family and stuff. I think things like this has kept me sane, just connecting with people, like connecting with having calls with different types of people. Walks, we've got a dog, so we love our walks, and just trying to do more of that. And recently, things that you don't do that much of, apart from when it's Christmas or something, like board games with my daughter, and we just have such a laugh. So, little things like that. It's just I know there's a lot of bad, but there's some good that's come out of this whole situation, I think.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And yeah, the walks are definitely like a routine for me in the morning.
Yeah.
I try and actually do 3 a day, but it depends what's going on.
Mm,
Because it keeps the mind ticking over, doesn't it? And like there's something a bit therapeutic about that I suppose as a like a routine, like the commute to work as well, isn't it? Like
yeah.
if you kind of get up in the morning, breakfast, do the walk back, it just separates the day. I'm not one for the staying in the pajamas and sort of
No.
sitting in bed with the laptop. I think it kind of, I don't know if there's a feeling to that. This just doesn't feel like I'm activating what I need to get
I
moving
know
and going.
exactly what you mean. I know exactly what you mean. And those walks and things are, I don't know the scientific argument around it, but I do see I know that it works for me is that um doing those almost like things that don't require the brain to be on all the time, it resets the brain, doesn't it? It resets a lot. I think you get more creative by being bored sometimes, or doing like a walk is not boring, but it's like it doesn't take that much of your brain power. And when I come back to the work because of walks or doing something completely different or being switched off from social media, I'm definitely more productive.
Yeah, and that was, I think maybe some of the overwhelmed or some of that feeling that I've talked about before does come from some of that where you've been bogged down on a task or whatever it might be, and you really just need to step away from it. And
Mm,
that boredom, like you say, I've never been like given what I've kind of stepped into here, and being your own boss, trying to start your own company, and there's something to boredom that does bring all of this creativity with it. And it's like rekindling that creativity that I almost thought it not disappeared, but beforehand it just didn't seem to be there, or I wasn't able to access that kind of energy. But now it seems to be just sprouting out. And I still can't control it. Some days you just absolutely crushing it and things are just
mm.
flying out. When I'm working out, that's when a lot of stuff happens. I'll be like, it'd be really annoying because I'll have to like get the pen and like write something down, and I'm like, I've got my timer going on my watch, like 60 seconds rest and all this, and I'm like, but that's the way that it works. It
Yeah.
kind of it's like these different energy channels need to be tapped into. You need the relaxation, the break, otherwise the brain just it's almost like it shuts down in its own way where you might go into the mad anxiety stare. There's a good gif of like I think Leonardo DiCaprio where he's like on a plane and he's like staring and someone like, oh, I can't think what the line is, but it's something like what is it? It's like when you're relaxing, but then realize you've still got anxiety, and
Right.
he's just intently staring into space. It's like, yeah, because whatever's going on, you're working too hard, you're stressed or
Yeah.
whatever, and your brain's saying, I need to zone out, I need to
Yeah.
phase out.
There's a real good, there's a illustrator, her Liz something, but she creates these illustrations that people share on LinkedIn quite a lot. I'm sure you've come across, if you probably recognize it if you see it, but she does things like a circle of this is what hard work, no, this is what success, or success is hard work, and it's a full circle just saying hard work, and then it's different. The next thing is it's like different pie charts, like hard work is part of it, rest, boredom, or what other things there are, but that's really what drives results and success, or productivity, I think it might be.
Yeah, no, I have seen that one, and it's obviously done the rounds because, like you say, I picture it in my head right now. Yeah, and how it's not kind of all hustle as the kind
Exactly.
of culture might be. It is all of these
Mm.
constituent parts that are like rest and sleep and reading or whatever it might be.
Yeah,
Um,
you should check out Katie Leeson if you haven't come across her. But
no, no, no.
yeah, she talks about that, like let's stop over glamorizing that, that hustle, that grind and stuff, because it doesn't do anyone any favors. And I totally agree with her.
Yeah, it's a very attractive. Like, I love kind of hard work and like those
Yeah,
environments that are like, do you know what I mean? Like the work ethic, like you kind of look up to it. But when people are talking about, yeah, like 4 hours sleep every night or whatever it might be, and all these kind of grandiose claims, and do you know what? Like, there might be some people that are just absolute beasts that can do that, and
yeah,
credit to them. Fine, you crack on. But I think again, it's the removal of what's best for the self, isn't it? And it's like,
exactly. Yeah.
you need to bring it back to, well, how am I performing under that set of circumstances? I know what I'd be like with 4 hours of sleep. It'd just be an absolute atrocity every day.
Oh yeah, I'd be Mr. Grump, that's for sure.
Sweet. All right then.
Cool.
Well, thanks for chatting today, Ash, and thanks for all the lessons. Like I say, I've definitely got a few things that I'll be taking away and working on. But much appreciated for
Yeah,
joining
wicked,
me.
man. And I've really enjoyed it. And I'll see more of you on LinkedIn then.
Yeah, hopefully.